Hello, everyone. Well, we are going to be talking about or learning about the correlation of stress with thyroid. We know that most women, more women, I should say, that suffer from thyroid than men. And we have Dr. Regino. She is a naturopathic doctor joining me live from Guam. Welcome and thank you so much. It's so exciting to have someone from the other part of the world joining us.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you. It's my pleasure. Excited to be here.
All right, let's just please help us understand what, overall overview of thyroid and how is stress correlated.
Yeah, sure. So what a great question, right? Because we all have stress. So in order to understand how stress impacts the thyroid, I think it's important to first understand how the normal thyroid works, so then we can understand when it's not working, why it's not working. So I'm going to start by outlining a normal pathway. So we have our brain control center, starting with the hypothalamus, sending a message to the pituitary gland. So our pituitary gland in the brain is this master gland that communicates with all of the different glands in the body. The thyroid, the adrenal glands, the ovaries, the testes. In this case, we're focusing on the thyroid. So the hypothalamus sends a message to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is going to send a message to the thyroid, and the message is TSH. And TSH stands for thyroid stimulating hormone. So the thyroid receives that message, and the message reads, thyroid make thyroid hormone. So the thyroid makes T4, a big, more of a bulk of it, and a little bit of a T3, and dumps it into the circulation. Now T4 is what it's called the inactive thyroid hormone, whereas T3 is the active thyroid hormone. And we want more of the active hormone because that's what's going to control our metabolism, right? Not just energy metabolism, but you know, our gut, our bone health, our immune system, you know, muscle, thermal regulation, right? Our body temperature. So we want more T3. So the body has the job of taking that bulk T4 and converting it into active T3. So the hormone is going to travel through the body, it's going to get to the liver, and within the liver, T4 will convert into the active form of T3. Now, this isn't a normal scenario, okay? So T4 can also convert into what it's called reverse T3 or RT3. Now, RT3 is a reserve form of T3, and it doesn't really do anything. It just sits there. So we don't want a lot of it. We want a bulk to be converted into T3, okay? So that's the normal pathway in the perfect thyroid world if everything is happening perfectly. Now, I'm gonna put that to the side and we're gonna shift a little bit towards the adrenal glands because this is where the stress adaptation comes from. So I started my talk with the thyroid in talking about the brain control center. So the same thing happens with the adrenals. We have the hypothalamus that talks to the pituitary that sends a message to the adrenal glands, okay? And then the adrenal glands, we have two of them. They look like two little hats and they sit one each on top of our kidneys. And they release several different hormones, but one of them that is most people are familiar with is the stress hormone cortisol. Okay, so cortisol has a normal circadian rhythm that it's supposed to be highest in the morning, and then throughout the day it's supposed to drop and decrease, and that's the normal pathway. The problem happens when we start to rely more and more on the need for cortisol due to chronic stress. Okay, we all have little tiny stresses throughout the day, but when we start experiencing stress frequently, right, all the time, we rely more and more on release of that cortisol. So instead of that circadian rhythm being high to decreasing to low, suddenly starts to become high all the time. Okay, so why is that a problem? And that going back to the question, right? Why, how does stress impact that? So why is that a problem? The more cortisol that we release, well, number one, too much cortisol can weaken immune barriers, such as the gut, for instance. Okay, so once we weaken the gut, we're predisposing ourselves for inflammation and dysbiosis. Guess what? Now we just created another alarm reaction, more stress on top of stress. Okay, so now we need more cortisol. Higher amounts of cortisol can actually shift the conversion from T4, a bulk percentage of T4, into reverse T3. So remember I talked about that T4 can convert into T3 or reverse T3? Well, too much cortisol can push the conversion into reverse T3, which is a reserve form of T3. And remember I said that doesn't do anything. So now our total amount of active T3 starts to go down and we start to become symptomatic, okay? Now, because in order to release cortisol, we also need the communication between the hypothalamus to the pituitary, to the adrenals. Well, that's also the pathway that we use to communicate with the thyroid. So that pathway starts to become exhausted and fatigued, maladaptive. Well, if we exhaust that pathway, guess who's also going to become compromised? Okay, the other glands, because we're also relying on that signaling from the hypothalamus to the pituitary, okay? So that will happen, you know, when we have too much release of cortisol. Over time, okay, as we become more and more fatigued, our body has a difficult time producing more cortisol, okay? So what happens next is that because we still need cortisol, but we can't get it, the body releases from the adrenal glands the hormone adrenaline or epinephrine, okay? So as you can imagine, if you have epinephrine or adrenaline running in your veins, okay, this is the typical, you're wired, but you're tired, okay? You're exhausted, but because you have adrenaline running in your veins, you feel wired, right? You feel hangry, you can have a little heart palpitation, heart racing, you just don't feel good, you feel jittery, okay? And why is that a problem? Well, epinephrine can activate what it's called TH17, T cell, okay, helper 17, which can turn on the switch for autoimmunity, okay? So now, you know, the implications of stress on the thyroid, in a long answer.
Wow, I mean, the way you explained it so beautifully, you can visualize things going up and down in our bodies, you know, when the stress is kind of playing this havoc. But the other, you know, the main thing is if someone has thyroid, they are going to be stressed out anyway. So they need extra help, right, to calm themselves down. But what are your thoughts on that?
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. So, you know, what's interesting is that low thyroid function or hypothyroid, you know, or low adrenal function, those two are almost always secondary to something else. And it really comes down to that stress, okay? And what is stress, right? So stress can be anything. It could be a physical, such as an injury, or maybe somebody had surgery and is trying to heal from it. It could be a biochemical process. It could be a food allergy that that person continues to ingest, creating this inflammation and additional stress and alarm reactions for the body. It could be mental emotional, right? It could be something present that's bothering them. Maybe they don't like their job and that's mentally exhausting. It could be something from the past. A trauma that, you know, has not been resolved and it keeps getting re-triggered due to, you know, whatever experiences they have throughout their current life. So the main point is always to go back and address the main stressor, okay? And that's where it takes a little bit of investigation, okay? Because it could be an infection, it could be a mental emotional thing, it could be an injury. But of course, in the meantime, while you dig to find what the real problem is, you may need to address and regulate the thyroid and help the adrenal glands a little bit, right? Excuse me, with, you know, adrenal support and or medication for the thyroid.
Okay. Well, this is a quick 10-minute session that we bring. I mean, the whole idea was to make people understand why it is so important to regulate our stress and de-stress ourselves, specifically for people who have thyroid conditions, right? Anything else you'd like to add before I wrap up?
Oh my goodness. I think we all can do a better job at regulating our stressors. And the last 2 years have been especially more stressful for some than others. So I think that's the take-home message.
All right. Yes, we absolutely need that, and especially in 2022, hopefully things will start, kind of subsiding with all the COVID and the Omicron, and we can start deflating our stress and
Absolutely. Absolutely.
leading a
Yeah.
more normal life, which we are all used to. Thank you so much, Dr. Regina, for joining us. Really appreciate amazing session, very concise, succinct, and making us understand how the stress and the hormone TSH are all interlinked. So critical for people who are suffering from thyroid to
Absolutely.
understand. Right. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Yes, to everyone else, keep supporting us. Keep listening to us every day for 10 minutes. Thank you. Bye-bye.